Nobody ever asked for proof. That was the first rule of the business. Every frightened homeowner wanted reassurance more than truth. Every abandoned hospital, forgotten church, or decaying farmhouse became another stage where fear could be sold like a ticket. Ethan Cross knew that better than anyone. His partner, Mara Quinn, preferred the word entertainment. "We don't hunt ghosts," she often laughed. "We hunt views." Their online channel, Anything But Ghosts, had become surprisingly successful. Millions watched them wander through supposedly haunted buildings carrying expensive cameras, infrared sensors, spirit boxes, and electromagnetic detectors. None of it mattered. The whispers were hidden Bluetooth speakers. The ghostly figures were edited afterward. The sudden door slams came from nearly invisible fishing lines. Their investigations weren't lies, Ethan insisted. They were performances. People wanted to believe. He simply helped them. That was easier than admitting he no longer believed in anything. Rain hammered the windshield as they drove toward Blackridge Manor. The GPS stopped working 10 miles earlier. Their phones displayed only empty signal bars. Perfect atmosphere, Mara grinned while filming herself. Storm outside. No reception. Creepy mansion. She smiled at the camera. "If we disappear tonight." She paused dramatically. "Please remember to like and subscribe." Ethan rolled his eyes. "You rehearsed that." "Obviously." Blackridge Manor stood alone beyond dead trees whose branches resembled broken fingers clawing toward the sky. The enormous Victorian mansion leaned slightly, as if exhausted after decades of standing. Its windows reflected nothing. Not even lightning. That bothered Ethan immediately. Every surface reflected light. Glass always did. These windows absorbed it. "That's weird." "What?" "Nothing." He grabbed several equipment cases. Most contained fake investigation tools. One contained hidden speakers. Another held projectors. A third was filled with props designed to imitate supernatural evidence. Business supplies. Nothing more. The front gate hung open. Not broken. Waiting. Wind refused to enter the property. Rain stopped abruptly the moment they crossed onto the grounds. Behind them, beyond the gate, rain continued falling heavily. Inside. Silence. Complete silence. Ethan frowned. "I don't like this." "You don't like unpaid invoices either." She continued recording. "This place is fantastic." The front door stood slightly open. No footprints covered the dusty entrance. No spiderwebs crossed the doorway. Almost as though someone had recently walked inside. Or something. The smell reached them first. Not mold. Not decay. Old paper. Burned wood. And something metallic hidden underneath. Blood. Fresh blood. Impossible. The house had supposedly been abandoned for 42 years. Every room appeared untouched. Family portraits lined the walls. Each face had been carefully scratched away. Not vandalized. Removed. Only blank skin remained where eyes and mouths should have been. Mara whistled. Somebody really committed to decorating. Ethan wasn't listening. He noticed every clock inside the mansion displayed exactly the same time. 3:17. Even broken clocks. Pocket watches. Grandfather clocks. Kitchen timers. Every single one. Stopped forever. At 3:17. They began setting up cameras. Routine. Comforting. Predictable. Mara secretly hid a Bluetooth speaker beneath loose floorboards. Ethan prepared fishing line near an upstairs bedroom. Everything was proceeding exactly like every fake investigation before. Until the fishing line tightened itself. He hadn't attached it. He hadn't touched it. The line stretched across the hallway. Pulled. Then snapped violently. The bedroom door slammed. Hard enough to shake the entire hallway. Mara looked upstairs. Ethan. I didn't do that. She laughed nervously. Seriously. I didn't. Silence answered. Neither moved. Because both knew exactly whose turn it had been. Neither had triggered the effect. A child's laughter echoed somewhere deep inside the house. Not through speakers. Not edited. Real. Tiny footsteps raced overhead. One child. Maybe two. Running. Playing. Then suddenly. Stopping. Directly above them. They stared upward. The ceiling groaned. Dust drifted downward. Something heavy crossed the room upstairs. Slowly. Dragging one foot. Then another. Scrape. Step. Scrape. Step. Mara whispered, "There's nobody here." Ethan forced himself to smile. Probably raccoons. Raccoons don't laugh. No. They didn't. The spirit box resting inside its unopened case suddenly switched on. Static exploded through the entrance hall. White noise crackled. Neither had inserted batteries. The batteries were still sealed inside their packaging. Static filled the room. Then. A voice. Clear. Female. Soft. Calm. You finally came back. The device switched off. Neither breathed. Neither spoke. Mara slowly opened the battery compartment. Empty. There had never been batteries inside. They laughed. Not because it was funny. Because terror often disguised itself as disbelief. There has to be someone messing with us, Mara whispered. Ethan nodded. Hidden speakers. But they're ours. Neither answered. The camera nearest the staircase suddenly beeped. Motion detected. Ethan checked the live monitor. The staircase was empty. Almost. Standing at the very top. Barely visible. A woman watched them. Her white dress seemed soaked. Her long hair covered her face. She wasn't moving. She wasn't blinking. She simply stood there. Watching. Ethan looked up instantly. The staircase was empty. He looked back at the monitor. She was closer now. Halfway down the stairs. Still perfectly still. Still facing them. Without taking a single visible step. The screen flickered. Then went black. Behind them. A voice spoke from the darkness. Quiet enough to sound almost affectionate. You make fake ghosts. A long pause. Then. We don't. Ethan spun around so fast the flashlight flew from his hand and clattered across the wooden floor. Its beam rolled in circles. Each sweep of light illuminated another empty corner. No woman. No footsteps. No breathing. Only the endless silence of Blackridge Manor. Mara forced a shaky laugh. Hidden speaker. Ethan stared into the darkness. Not ours. Neither wanted to admit the obvious. Someone, or something, had spoken directly behind them. And there had been no one there. They decided to continue filming. Not because they were brave. Because quitting meant admitting fear. Their audience expected drama. Instead, they were becoming trapped inside it. Mara retrieved camera 3 from the staircase. The memory card was gone. She frowned. I put a brand new card in here. Ethan checked the slot himself. Empty. He searched his pockets. Nothing. The floor. Nothing. The card had simply vanished. So much for our evidence, Mara muttered. A child's voice drifted from upstairs. You already have it. Both froze. The voice had sounded amused. Almost playful. The mansion seemed larger now. Hallways stretched farther than before. Doors appeared where no doors had existed minutes earlier. Their floor plan no longer matched reality. Ethan unfolded the printed blueprint. I swear this hallway wasn't here. The corridor ahead extended into complete darkness. Portraits covered both walls. Unlike those downstairs, these faces had eyes. Every portrait stared directly toward them. As they walked, the eyes followed. Mara refused to look. It's a trick of perspective. Keep telling yourself that. Halfway down the hallway they found a nursery. Dust covered everything except one rocking chair. It moved gently. Forward. Back. Forward. Back. No wind. No sound except the slow creak of old wood. The chair suddenly stopped. Perfectly still. Then it began rocking the opposite direction. As though someone invisible had stood up. Mara quietly reached into her backpack. If we're doing this, we may as well use the fake EMF meter. She switched it on. Normally the hidden program made random lights blink. Instead, every light illuminated at once. The plastic casing became almost too hot to touch. Smoke curled from the battery compartment. Then the device spoke. Not electronically. Not through a speaker. A tiny whisper escaped from inside the cracked plastic. Liar. The screen shattered. Tiny cracks spread across the display like black veins. The meter died forever. Ethan refused to panic. There has to be an explanation. There always is. He kept repeating the sentence. The more often he said it, the less he believed it. Another room waited at the end of the corridor. Unlike everything else inside the mansion, it was spotless. No dust. No decay. No cobwebs. A dinner table stood prepared for 4 people. Fresh candles burned steadily. Steam rose from untouched bowls of soup. The smell was rich and warm. Comforting. Impossible. Mara stepped closer. Someone lives here. Ethan reached toward one of the bowls. Before his fingers touched it, every candle went out. Darkness swallowed the room. Something cold brushed his ear. You are late. The candles reignited. The table was empty. No soup. No plates. Only rotten wood covered with decades of dust. A loud crash echoed downstairs. They ran. Their equipment cases had been opened. Every fake ghost prop lay scattered across the entrance hall. Fishing lines. Projectors. Artificial blood. Bluetooth speakers. Each item had been arranged neatly into a circle. In the center rested a single sheet of yellowed paper. Neither had brought paper. Mara picked it up carefully. The handwriting was elegant. Old-fashioned. It read, "We know what you pretend to be." Below the sentence appeared 2 names. Ethan Cross. Mara Quinn. Their full names. Not their stage names. Not the names used online. Their real names. Ethan's mouth went dry. We never told anyone. No. We never do. The paper slowly darkened. Letters bled into fresh ink. A second sentence appeared. Now pretend to leave. The front door stood only 20 feet away. They didn't hesitate. Ethan grabbed the handle. Pulled. Nothing. Locked. Mara threw her shoulder against it. The wood didn't move. Together they pushed until exhaustion burned through their arms. The door refused to open. The windows wouldn't break. Even heavy camera tripods bounced harmlessly off the glass. Outside, rain continued falling beyond the property. Inside, not a single drop. It was as if the mansion existed behind invisible walls. Their phones suddenly vibrated. Signal. 1 bar. Then 2. Hope returned instantly. Ethan dialed emergency services. The call connected. He heard breathing. Slow. Wet. Then, his own voice answered. Don't come. The line disconnected. Mara stared at him. I called too. What happened? She swallowed hard. My phone answered. What did it say? She looked toward the staircase. It told me. A tear rolled down her face. That we've already died. Every grandfather clock inside the mansion struck once. Not 12 times. Not 3. Just 1. The sound echoed through every room simultaneously. Then all the clocks began ticking. For the first time in 42 years. Tick. 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 Each second grew louder. More violent. Like hundreds of hearts beating inside the walls. Then every clock stopped together. The hands had moved. No longer pointing to 3:17. Now every clock displayed exactly the same time. 3:16. 1 minute earlier. As if time itself had begun moving backward. And somewhere in the darkness above them, someone laughed. Not like a child this time. Like a person who knew exactly how the story would end. The laughter lingered long after it stopped. It seeped into the walls, into the floorboards, into Ethan's chest, until he could no longer tell whether he had heard it or imagined it. The clock still read 3:16. None of them ticked. Yet Ethan could hear time passing. A slow, wet, heartbeat echoed through Blackridge Manor. Thump. 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 Mara whispered, "This house isn't haunted." Ethan looked at her. "It's watching us." For the first time since starting their fake paranormal business, neither of them reached for a camera. Recording no longer mattered. Surviving did. But every camera they had left around the mansion switched on by itself. Tiny red recording lights blinked from distant rooms. One after another. As if the house had become the filmmaker. A television sitting in the corner of the drawing room suddenly crackled to life. It wasn't plugged into anything. The screen filled with static before an image slowly appeared. Not a ghost. Not an old movie. It was Ethan. 8 years younger. Standing inside an abandoned prison. One of their earliest investigations. He watched himself secretly attaching fishing line to a rusted cell door. The footage had never been released. Only Ethan and Mara had been there. No. Ethan whispered. The video continued. Another investigation. Another lie. Mara hiding Bluetooth speakers. Ethan editing fake apparitions onto footage. Every deception. Every trick. Every fraud. Events that had taken place in private. Things no camera had ever recorded. Yet here they were. Broadcast back to them. The television hissed. A message appeared in white letters. We have always been watching. The screen exploded. Glass showered across the room. Mara's breathing became uneven. Someone knows everything. No, Ethan replied. Someone impossible knows everything. A scratching sound came from inside the walls. Soft at first. Then louder. Scratch. 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 It spread throughout the house. Behind every wall. Above every ceiling. Below every floor. Thousands of fingernails scraping old wood. Neither dared move. The wallpaper behind them bulged outward. Slowly. Like someone pressing from the other side. A human face pushed through the wall without tearing it. Nose. Lips. Closed eyes. The wallpaper stretched over every feature like thin skin. Then another face emerged beside it. Then another. And another. Dozens of silent faces pressed outward from the walls, mouths opening soundlessly as if trying to scream. Their eyes opened. Every single pair stared directly at Ethan. The walls whispered in perfect unison. Liar. The faces slowly sank back into the wallpaper. Nothing remained. Only faded flowers. They ran. The hallway seemed endless. Every doorway led back to the same staircase. Every staircase returned to the same hallway. The mansion folded around itself like a maze built from memory instead of bricks. Mara stopped abruptly. We've passed this painting 4 times. It showed a family standing outside. Blackridge Manor. Father. Mother. Little girl. Little boy. Except now there were 6 people. 2 new figures stood at the edge of the painting. Ethan. Mara. Their faces were pale. Their smiles looked forced. The paint still glistened. As though someone had added them moments ago. A child's voice echoed nearby. Do you like your picture? They spun around. Standing at the end of the corridor was a little girl. Perhaps 8 years old. Barefoot. White dress. Dark hair hanging over her face. She held a small teddy bear missing one button eye. Unlike everything else they had seen. She looked completely real. Not transparent. Not distorted. Simply. A child. Mara knelt cautiously. Are you lost? The little girl tilted her head. You are. Before either of them could respond. She smiled. Her mouth stretched impossibly wide. Far beyond human anatomy. Rows upon rows of tiny black teeth filled the darkness inside. Then she blinked. And vanished. The teddy bear dropped onto the floor. Ethan picked it up. It was warm. As if someone had been holding it only seconds before. They reached the mansion's library. Shelves stretched from floor to ceiling. Thousands of books. Every title was identical. Anything but ghosts. Mara pulled one free. Inside were photographs. Not printed photographs. Polaroids. Hundreds of them. Each showed Ethan and Mara during different investigations. Sleeping. Driving. Eating. Laughing. Arguing. Images taken through windows. Across parking lots. From hotel hallways. Some were years old. Others had clearly been taken yesterday. The final photograph slipped from the pages. It showed the 2 of them standing exactly where they were now. In the library. Looking at the photograph. Someone had taken the picture only seconds earlier. Ethan slowly turned around. Nobody stood behind them. Yet another camera shutter clicked. Flash. Darkness. When their vision returned. A new Polaroid rested on the floor. It showed them turning around after seeing the first photograph. Beneath it, written in neat handwriting. Look up. Neither wanted to. Both did. The ceiling was covered with faces. Hundreds of them. Upside down. Silent. Watching. They blinked together. Then all smiled at once. The lights throughout the library went out. Complete darkness swallowed them. A woman's voice floated through the blackness. Gentle. Almost kind. You came here pretending to find ghosts. A pause. You never asked. Something cold wrapped around Ethan's wrist. Whether the ghosts wanted to find you. The emergency light on one abandoned camera suddenly flickered on. Its dim red glow illuminated the room. Ethan and Mara stood alone. But on the camera's tiny display, two shadowy figures stood directly behind them. Smiling. And as Ethan slowly turned, praying the screen was lying, the whisper came again. This time from inches behind his ear. Don't turn around. Ethan froze. Every instinct screamed at him to spin around. Instead, he stood perfectly still. The whisper behind his ear came again. Closer. Softer. Almost comforting. Good. A cold breath brushed the back of his neck. Then. Nothing. Mara stared at him, her face drained of color. Don't move, she whispered. You can see it. She nodded. Tears gathered in her eyes. It's standing behind you. Ethan swallowed. What does it look like? Mara's lips trembled. It doesn't have a face. The red recording light on the camera blinked twice. When Ethan cautiously looked at the tiny screen again, the shadow behind him had disappeared. The library was empty. Except for the hundreds of books. Every copy of anything but ghosts fell from the shelves at once. The thunderous crash echoed through the mansion. Pages fluttered like frightened birds. Every page was blank. Except one. On each book, a different page contained a single sentence. Together, they formed a message. The house does not kill liars. It makes them tell the truth. The heartbeat inside the walls grew louder. Thump. 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 The floor vibrated beneath their feet. Dust drifted from the ceiling. The mansion felt alive. Not haunted. Alive. As though every beam and brick were part of one enormous sleeping creature slowly waking up. A door appeared where there had only been a wall. Old oak. Black handle. Carved into the wood was a single word. Confession. Neither remembered seeing it before. There wasn't a room here, Mara whispered. There is now. The door creaked open by itself. Inside waited a narrow hallway lit by candles that burned with pale blue flames. At the end stood a wooden chair facing a large mirror. Nothing else. No windows. No exit. Just the chair. And the mirror. They stepped inside. The door slammed shut behind them. The candles extinguished simultaneously. Only the mirror glowed faintly. At first, it reflected the room exactly as it was. Then, the reflection changed. Mirror Ethan smiled. Real Ethan did not. Mirror Mara slowly turned toward Mirror Ethan. The reflections began speaking. But no sound came from their mouths. Instead, voices echoed directly inside Ethan's head. You knew Mrs. Holloway wasn't being haunted. Mirror Ethan nodded. You took $20,000 anyway. A memory exploded into Ethan's mind. An elderly widow. Terrified after her husband's death. She believed his spirit was trapped in her home. Ethan had known she was grieving. Not haunted. Still, he had accepted her money. He'd even staged fake paranormal activity to convince her she'd been cleansed. The memory ended. Mirror Ethan looked ashamed. Real Ethan couldn't look away. The mirror shifted again. Now it showed Mara. Years earlier. A desperate father begging her to investigate strange noises in his apartment. Instead of helping, she had secretly planted evidence to create a viral episode. Millions had watched. The family had become a joke online. They moved away soon after. Mara began crying. Real Mara collapsed onto her knees. I never meant. The room interrupted. You meant profit. The mirror cracked. Not from impact. From inside. Dark liquid seeped through the fractures. It wasn't blood. It moved too slowly. Too deliberately. The black fluid dripped onto the floor and began flowing toward Ethan's boots. Where it touched the wood, whispered voices escaped. Hundreds of them. Not angry. Disappointed. You borrowed fear. You sold sorrow. You wore our names. The liquid stopped inches from Ethan. It formed letters across the floorboards. What are you afraid of? Ethan answered before thinking. Ghosts. The letters dissolved. New words appeared. No. His chest tightened. The floor shifted again. You are afraid of yourself. Silence. Because the house was right. He had never feared the dead. He feared the day someone would expose the lie that had become his entire life. The mirror shattered outward. Thousands of shards floated in the air instead of falling. Every fragment reflected a different version of Ethan and Mara. Old. Young. Smiling. Crying. Dead. One shard showed both of them lying in coffins. Another showed them trapped inside the walls of Blackridge Manor. Another showed them growing old inside the house. Unable to leave. Watching new visitors arrive. Waiting. Just like the ghosts. Suddenly every shard dropped. Glass exploded across the floor. The room disappeared. They were standing back in the mansion's main hallway. Neither remembered leaving. Behind them. The door marked confession was gone. Only a solid wall remained. A faint melody drifted through the house. Someone was humming a lullaby. The same tune repeated over and over. Slow. Gentle. Wrong. They followed the sound to the grand staircase. Halfway up sat the little girl with the teddy bear. She wasn't smiling anymore. She looked frightened. For the first time. She raised one finger to her lips. Shoo. Ethan whispered, "What's wrong?" The little girl slowly looked toward the second floor. Her expression changed from fear to pity. They're awake. The humming stopped instantly. A deep groan echoed through the mansion. Not from the walls. Not from the floor. From somewhere far below the house. As though something unimaginably large had just opened its eyes beneath Blackridge Manor. Then, for the first time since entering the mansion. A voice that was not a child. Not a woman. Not human. Spoke from underneath them. It said only 4 words. Bring them down. The floor shuddered. Not from an earthquake. From footsteps. Something impossibly heavy was moving beneath the foundation of Blackridge Manor. One step. Silence. Another step. The sound traveled through the beams, the walls, and finally into Ethan's bones. The mansion wasn't built on the ground. It was built over something. The little girl on the staircase slowly backed away. For the first time since they had seen her, she looked terrified. They heard you, she whispered. Then she vanished. The front door slammed open by itself. Cold rain poured through the entrance. Ethan stared in disbelief. We can leave. Mara didn't move. Something felt wrong. Too easy. Ethan rushed toward the doorway. The moment he crossed the threshold, he found himself standing back inside the front hall. The door was behind him again. He had walked forward. The house had folded space around him. No, he whispered. He tried again. The same result. Each attempt brought him back to the exact same spot. Blackridge Manor wasn't trapping their bodies anymore. It was trapping reality itself. A low bell rang somewhere below. Once. Twice. 3 times. Every portrait in the hallway changed. The scratched-out faces returned. Men. Women. Children. All dressed in clothes from different centuries. Their expressions weren't angry. They were pleading. One by one, they lifted trembling hands and pointed toward the basement. Not because they wanted Ethan and Mara to go there. Because something below was already coming up. A narrow door beneath the staircase creaked open. Neither had noticed it before. Stone steps disappeared into darkness. Warm air drifted upward. It smelled of damp earth, burnt paper. And fresh flowers left at a funeral. A child's voice echoed from below. You shouldn't make it wait. They descended. The deeper they went, the quieter the house became. No heartbeat. No whispers. No scratching inside the walls. Even the silence felt nervous. The staircase ended inside a vast underground chamber. Its ceiling disappeared into darkness. Thousands of candles burned without melting. Ancient stone pillars surrounded a circular floor covered with names carved into the rock. Thousands of names. Some centuries old. Some modern. Near the center. Freshly carved. Ethan Cross. Mara Quinn. Neither name had been there when they entered the house. Yet the stone looked decades old. In the middle of the chamber stood a massive well. Black. Bottomless. No rope. No bucket. Just darkness. The humming returned. It wasn't coming from above anymore. It was rising from inside the well. Soft. Patient. Waiting. Ethan forced himself closer. The darkness inside wasn't empty. It moved. Slowly. Like countless hands reaching upward just beneath the surface. A voice emerged. Not loud. Not threatening. Calm. You built a business selling fear. Another voice joined it. You convinced people ghosts were entertainment. Then dozens. Then hundreds. We are not entertainment. The chamber shook. Every candle flickered blue. Mara fell to her knees. I'm sorry. The voices stopped. The silence that followed was somehow worse. Then came the answer. You are sorry because you are afraid. She couldn't deny it. Because it was true. Something climbed out of the well. Not a monster. Not a demon. A man. Or what had once been a man. His clothes were soaked. His skin looked pale enough to disappear into the darkness. His face constantly changed. An old woman. A young soldier. A child. A priest. A bride. Hundreds of faces flowed across him like reflections on disturbed water. Every victim the house had ever remembered. Every forgotten soul sharing one impossible body. When he finally spoke. Every voice emerged together. We are what remains. Ethan backed away. What do you want? The figure tilted its head. The truth. That's all. The truth has always been enough. The chamber walls began filling with moving shadows. Not ghosts. Memories. Families mourning loved ones. Children crying over empty bedrooms. Parents refusing to leave graves. People searching desperately for signs that death wasn't the end. The same people Ethan and Mara had manipulated for views, money, and applause. Not because they were evil. Because they were vulnerable. The memories faded. The figure looked directly at them. You fed on grief. Ethan's legs gave out. He remembered every fake seance. Every staged possession. Every frightened face that had trusted him. Every lie he had called hope. He realized something that hurt more than fear. He couldn't remember the last time he had told the truth without expecting something in return. The figure stretched out one hand. Its skin dissolved into drifting ash. We offer only one choice. The chamber darkened. The candles extinguished together. Only the changing faces remained visible. Speak the truth. The voice echoed through the stone. Or become another story this house remembers forever. A sharp crack echoed overhead. The ceiling split open. Blackridge Manor groaned like a wounded animal. Something enormous began descending from the darkness above the well. The changing-faced figure looked upward. And, for the first time, fear crossed every face it wore. It whispered only one sentence. It found us first. The chamber fell silent. Not the silence of an empty room. The silence of a forest when every living creature senses a predator. Even the shifting figure with 100 faces stepped backward from the well. Its countless expressions, all young, old, joyful, grieving, merged into one unmistakable emotion. Fear. Ethan had spent years pretending to fear ghosts. Now he watched ghosts fear something else. That frightened him more than anything he had ever experienced. A low, impossible sound rolled through the cavern. It wasn't a growl. It wasn't a scream. It was the noise of thousands of people whispering at once, every word overlapping until language itself dissolved into static. The darkness above the well thickened. It did not descend. It unfolded. Like a shadow peeling itself away from the world. There was no body. No face. No eyes. Only an absence so complete that Ethan's mind kept trying, and failing, to give it a shape. Every time he looked directly at it, he forgot what he had just seen. Only the terror remained. The many-faced spirit whispered. Do not try to remember it. The candles relit on their own. Not with blue flames. With black ones. Their light illuminated nothing. Instead, they erased the edges of the room. The stone walls disappeared. The pillars vanished. Soon Ethan could no longer tell where the chamber ended. Or whether it had ever existed at all. The mansion. The basement. The well. Everything felt like a dream someone else was forgetting. Mara clutched her head. I can't remember why we came here. Ethan opened his mouth. No answer came. Their memories were unraveling. Not disappearing. Being quietly rewritten. Photographs from childhood surfaced in his mind. Except they weren't his. He remembered drowning. He remembered burning. He remembered dying alone in a snowstorm. Hundreds of deaths. None of them belonged to him. The ghosts were losing themselves. And now so were the living. The many-faced figure cried out. Its borrowed faces began peeling away like paper in a fire. Each face drifted upward toward the darkness. One by one they vanished. A little girl. An old sailor. A mother holding an infant. A schoolteacher. A doctor. A bride. Every soul the house had preserved for generations was being erased. Not destroyed. Forgotten. The house had remembered them. The thing above the well did not allow memories. The little girl with the teddy bear appeared beside Ethan. For the first time, her face was fully visible. She looked ordinary. A child with frightened eyes. I don't want to disappear, she whispered. What is it? Ethan asked. She looked toward the darkness. It isn't a ghost. What is it? It comes when people stop believing the dead were ever alive. The word struck Ethan harder than any scream. He and Mara had spent years turning grief into spectacle. Every fake haunting. Every manufactured possession. Every laugh at frightened people. Bit by bit, they had made death feel cheap. Meaningless. The house had been built to remember those forgotten by the world. The thing in the darkness existed to erase them completely. Ghosts weren't feeding it. Forgetfulness was. The darkness shifted. Suddenly Ethan was standing in his own apartment. Morning sunlight poured through the windows. His phone rang. Mara called. Ready for today's investigation. Everything felt normal. Safe. Blackridge Manor had never existed. He almost believed it. Then he noticed muddy footprints leading across his living room floor. Tiny barefoot footprints. Ending beside the couch. Where the teddy bear waited. The illusion shattered. He was still beneath the mansion. Mara wasn't so lucky. She laughed happily. We're home. She hugged Ethan. What are you talking about? She couldn't see the cavern anymore. Couldn't hear the whispers. The darkness had trapped her inside a perfect memory. She smiled at people who weren't there. Answered conversations no one else could hear. The thing wasn't killing her. It was replacing reality with comforting lies. The same lies she had sold to others. The many-faced figure staggered toward Ethan. Only one face remained. Its own. A tired old man. We cannot stop it. Then what do we do? You can. How? The old man looked at him with exhausted eyes. Truth is remembered. A pause. Lies are forgotten. The chamber shook violently. The mansion above screamed as ancient beams splintered. The darkness spread across the ceiling like ink through water. It reached toward Mara. Toward Ethan. Toward every remaining ghost. The little girl hugged her teddy bear. Please. She looked at Ethan with tears in her eyes. Don't let us be forgotten. The old man closed his eyes. Speak the truth. The darkness stopped. Waiting. Listening. As though the next words Ethan chose would determine whether Blackridge Manor remained a place of memory. Or became a place where every life, every death, and every name would vanish forever. Ethan drew a trembling breath. He had lied for years without hesitation. Now the truth was the only weapon he had left. He opened his mouth to confess. And the darkness whispered his greatest fear. No one will believe you. No one will believe you. The words echoed through the underground chamber, not as a threat, but as a certainty. Ethan closed his eyes. For years, he had built a career convincing millions that ghosts were nothing more than clever tricks and profitable stories. If he survived tonight and told the truth, who would believe the confession of a professional fraud? No one. That was the punishment. Not death. Truth without trust. The darkness drifted closer. The ghosts around the well faded like old photographs left in the sun. The little girl hugged her worn teddy bear. I'm disappearing. Her voice had become so faint Ethan almost didn't hear it. The old man with the final remaining face looked at Ethan one last time. Memory is all we are. Then even his face began dissolving into black dust. Mara still smiled at the illusion surrounding her. She laughed at invisible friends. She greeted people who had never existed. The darkness had given her exactly what she wanted. A comfortable lie. Ethan realized something horrifying. The creature never forced anyone to believe. It simply offered an easier reality. Most people accepted it willingly. For the first time in years, Ethan spoke without performing. Without exaggerating. Without trying to entertain. I'm a fraud. His voice shook. I lied to grieving families. The chamber trembled. I sold fear for money. The black flames around the room shrank. I told people ghosts weren't real because it was easier than admitting I had never looked for the truth. The darkness hesitated. Not retreating. Listening. I laughed at people who were desperate for hope. The mansion groaned overhead. Stone cracked. The names carved into the floor began glowing with a pale white light. Ethan turned toward Mara. I lied to you, too. Her smile faded. The illusion flickered. I kept telling us we were just making entertainment. His eyes filled with tears. But every fake haunting stole a little more dignity from people who were already hurting. Mara blinked. The false world around her shattered like broken glass. She collapsed onto the stone floor, crying. I remember. The darkness screamed. For the first time, it sounded afraid. Not because Ethan had defeated it. Because someone had chosen truth over comfort. The chamber erupted with blinding white light. Every carved name on the stone floor shone brilliantly. Thousands of voices rose together. Not in terror. In remembrance. Parents called their children. Children called their mothers. Friends spoke forgotten names. The ghosts weren't asking to return to life. They only wanted to be remembered. The little girl smiled. A genuine smile. My name. She whispered it softly. Emily. It was the first time anyone had heard her name. She laughed, not with madness, but with relief. Her form slowly became transparent. Before fading, she looked at Ethan. Thank you, for remembering. She disappeared peacefully. Not erased. Released. The darkness above the well cracked. Apart. It had no face to twist in pain. No mouth to scream. Yet its impossible shape fractured into countless pieces before dissolving into nothing. Not destroyed forever. Only denied its power. Because truth had broken the lie it fed upon. Silence returned. Real silence. The heartbeat beneath Blackridge Manor stopped. The candles went out. Warm morning sunlight filtered through cracks in the ceiling. For the first time, the mansion felt empty. Not haunted. At peace. Hours later, rescue workers found Ethan and Mara sitting outside the ruins of Blackridge Manor. The mansion had partially collapsed during the night. There was no underground chamber. No ancient well. No carved names. Only broken stone and rotten wood. Investigators concluded that stress, dehydration, and panic had caused hallucinations. The official report never mentioned ghosts. Weeks passed. The channel Anything But Ghosts uploaded one final video. No dramatic music. No jump scares. No edited shadows. Just Ethan sitting alone in front of the camera. I owe a lot of people the truth. He confessed every fake investigation. Every staged haunting. Every deception. He apologized to the families he had exploited. Millions watched. Most viewers laughed. Others called it another publicity stunt. Many believed it was simply the greatest performance he had ever given. The channel lost nearly all of its subscribers. Soon afterward, Ethan deleted it forever. Years later, Blackridge Manor was demolished completely. A public memorial park was built in its place. Visitors often reported an odd feeling of peace there. Sometimes, children claimed they saw a little girl sitting beneath the oldest tree, holding a teddy bear. She never frightened anyone. She only smiled before quietly disappearing. No photographs of her ever came out clearly. Ethan never investigated another haunting. He spent the rest of his life helping families preserve the stories of those they had lost, collecting photographs, letters, recordings, and memories so they would never be forgotten. He never claimed to know whether ghosts existed. He no longer needed proof. Because he had learned the most terrifying truth of all. Ghosts were never the greatest horror. The greatest horror was allowing a life to vanish so completely that no one remembered it had ever existed. And somewhere, whenever a forgotten name was spoken aloud with love, the darkness waited. Hungry. Patient. Hoping that one day humanity would choose comforting lies over painful truth once again. The end.